Sometimes the best way to really get your head around a tough philosophical idea isn't through some dusty old textbook, but through a dark, powerful story. Today, we're going to explore the brutal philosophy of transformation by looking at how nightmares are made. So let's dive in.
Just think about that for a second. This line perfectly captures the entity we're about to dissect. It's not about what she does, it's about what she is. It sets the stage for a being that is just a fundamental break in the laws of reality.
Okay, so our first case study is this entity known as the Iron Queen. But she's not a queen in any way you'd recognize. She's what the source material calls a singularity of magic, something totally new, forged from the pieces of things that came before. So, the Iron Queen, who also goes by Baba Malefica, isn't a single person. Think of her more like a monstrous alloy, a kind of alchemical fusion. She is one single consciousness, but she was created by violently smashing together three legendary figures into a new kind of nightmare, one that is way, way more powerful than the sum of its parts.
What's so wild here isn't just the list of ingredients, it's the horrifying way they work together. This is a strategic fusion. You've got the raw power source from a demon, the physical body of pure elemental rage from a dragon, and the cosmic brain of a crone. You're not just adding them up, you're multiplying their potential into something brand new and terrifyingly coherent.
So, how did a being like this even come to exist? Well, it wasn't a birth, it wasn't an accident, it was a deliberate, violent, alchemical process. It has a name, and it has a terrifying purpose.
The spinning of the void. That's what the ritual is called. And the language here is so important. It's not the merging or the combining. No, it's spinning, which implies this forceful, disorienting act of recreation. This was not a gentle union. This was a brutal forging.
And this just lays out the sheer brutality of it all. Step 1, the grind, a literal deconstruction, breaking down the raw materials of gods. Step 2, the weave, a grotesque reassembly, literally stitching flesh to bone with hellfire. And finally, the ignition, an explosion that doesn't destroy, but fuses. It's a process of destruction, then recreation, and ultimately transformation. So this brings us right to the heart of the matter. When you tear something apart and rebuild it into something new, have you destroyed it, or have you actually transformed it into something more? And this is where our monster story starts to reveal a really profound philosophical blueprint. Because it turns out this horrifying ritual isn't just some fantasy story. It's a dark, visceral metaphor for a very real and very challenging idea about what it truly takes to grow. Yup, the philosopher is Friedrich Nietzsche, and the concept is called self-overcoming. The violent birth of the Iron Queen is, as the source calls it, a terrifyingly literal expression of what Nietzsche argued we all have to go through to become more than we are. Okay, so the first part of this is the goal. Nietzsche called it Übergang, or overgoing. It's this idea that humanity is like a bridge, and we're meant to constantly be crossing it, to be in this state of continuous transformation, always pushing to get past our current limits and reach a higher state of being. But here's the twist, the paradox, and it's the part our monster story shows so well. To achieve that overgoing, you first have to go through Untergang, or downgoing. Now, this isn't failure, it's the necessary price. It is the active, deliberate, and often painful dismantling of your old self, your beliefs, your identity, all to clear the path for the new. And here it is, the aha moment, where the horror lines up perfectly with the philosophy. The grind and the weave, that brutal physical deconstruction with wings and hellfire, that is the violent dismantling of Nietzsche's downgoing down. And the ignition, that transformative explosion, it's the ultimate act of self-sacrifice, clearing the way for a new, singular, and much more powerful being to emerge. The monster's birth is a perfect, if horrifying, blueprint for this entire process. Now, this idea of violent transformation doesn't just apply to individuals, or, monsters. The source material gives us a second story where this exact same philosophical demand is placed on an entire species, putting humanity itself on trial. This conflict is framed as a metaphysical wager. On one side, you have the Wotan archetype, this godlike figure who represents the drive for self-overcoming. On the other side, you have the cosmic tyrant Darkseid, who represents the complete destruction of the self. So the wager is this: can humanity, when faced with total annihilation, make the evolutionary leap it needs to make to survive? So the crucial thing to get here is that this is a battle of ideas. Watan is the will to become more, the big yes to existence. Darkseid and his anti-life equation are the ultimate no, the end of individuality, the end of struggle, the end of becoming anything at all. The conflict forces a choice: evolve or be erased. And look at how this pressure is turned up. It's not all at once. It starts subtly, with psychological horror breeding despair. Then it ramps up to physical threats, and finally, it becomes this catastrophic, overwhelming invasion. This escalating crisis is the crucible, the force that's designed to trigger that species-wide downgoing, a trial by fire to see if humanity can finally achieve its overgoing. Okay, so let's tie these two dark stories together and really pull out the main idea. We've got a monster forged in a fire and a species tested by the apocalypse. So what's the common thread? A profound rejection of stagnation. That's the engine behind everything we've talked about. The parts of the Iron Queen were forced out of their individual limits. Humanity is pushed to evolve beyond its current state. In both cases, to stay as you are means you cease to exist. Transformation, no matter how violent it is the only other option. So what's the big takeaway from these dark allegories? It's this central, brutal paradox that growth actually requires destruction. To achieve that overgoing and to transcend, you have to first experience a downgoing, a sacrifice of the old self. Whether it's the parts of a monster being forged into a new, terrible alloy, or an entire species facing the end of the world, the message is the same. Transformation is the only alternative to standing still, no matter what it costs. And that brings this whole cosmic, monstrous idea right back down to us, with a really provocative and deeply personal question. If growth requires sacrifice, if becoming more means leaving something behind, what part of yourself must be broken?